On May 6, 2024, a young girl was preparing to test something. At the top of a building in a large city, she was getting ready to leap. But suddenly, as she fell, she magically vanished. And then she reappeared, falling rapidly onto a beach. After emerging from the water, she realized she had reached a new record of 50 kilometers, and she was pleased to confirm her teleportation ability. After that, she magically moved to the bathroom of her home. Her mother was startled to hear the sudden noise of the shower. She hadn't seen the girl come home for dinner. While eating, her mother recalled that her father's memorial was coming up. And so the girl remembered years before when her mother cried after her father had been stabbed. However, she decided to take a deep breath and not dwell on it. After dinner, Mina returned to the top of a building in the big city, and so she resumed her teleportation testing, moving rapidly. She discovered that her teleportation lasted between 1 to 2 seconds, and she could use it a maximum of 24 times in a row. That day, she was trying 2 new abilities, and the first would be facing through walls. When she had tried before, she failed and fell brutally. Now her second test was to find out how much money she could move in a single teleport. But beyond that, it would be perfect to make getting to school easier, saving time and money, though it would attract unwanted attention. However, some students never worried about that because they had rich parents. So robbing a bank seemed like a quick solution to her. After thinking about it, Nainad decided to leave the classroom to reflect a bit. She realized the only thing her ability had really shown her was how amazing the world could be. So you still didn't know what she could really do with that power. Suddenly, she heard a noise coming from outside and noticed some girls bullying a younger student. She concluded that even in such an incredible world, there were still bad people. The boy, Chan-hee, cried as the others mocked him. The cruel teenagers were enjoying the situation. They teased him about the makeup they had painted on his face. But not satisfied, they then decided to spray water into the defenseless boy's face. Seeing the boy's suffering, Min-ah concluded her ability could help him. Meanwhile, the mean girl continued to intimidate him, but she soon noticed someone else was nearby. When she called out to Mina, the girl opened the door and walked outside, joining the others. But when she got close, she punched the girl hard in the face. Lying on the ground, she chose to silently ignore the nasty comments made by the bully, but suddenly, Mina snapped when they mentioned something about her past. The girls were talking about her father having been a police officer who appeared in the news. Upon hearing that, she grabbed the bully by the hair, provoking her. And once again, she slapped her hard in the face, throwing Min-na to the ground and kicking her again with full force. The bully's friends simply watched the scene, not caring. The girl, enjoying herself sadistically, tossed some money onto Min-na's body, calling her poor, and finally decided to stop bothering Min-na and Chan-hee for now. The other students laughed, saying she was just a low-income girl without a father. They said her man didn't even die a heroic death. They mocked that he had just been stabbed in a bar, which was pathetic. But upon hearing that, Nina walked up to the girl and grabbed her, and suddenly both of them were teleported into the ocean. Not understanding what was happening, the mean girl screamed in despair as she fell. But without anyone realizing she had disappeared, Mina had already teleported back alone. After that, she felt strangely satisfied with her revenge. Meanwhile, Lua was struggling to survive in the middle of the sea and soon drowned in the ocean. Mina began to recall a past memory where she had simply taken the life of a dog. Dory had killed her rabbit, Sina. So she gave him the punishment he deserved, just like she did with Lua. But now at school, she was worried whether the girl might still be alive in the ocean. Meanwhile, her friends were starting to notice the girl's absence. Min-ah and Chan-hee noticed one of the boys looking worried, and then she realized that no one had seen what she had done. But soon noticed Chan-hee next to her and wondered if he had seen it. Chan-hee quickly became frightened when someone yelled at him. One of the bullies punched him in the face, throwing him far away. One of his friends tries to calm him down since he's out of control due to Lua's disappearance and reminds him that acting like that could get him expelled from school. Even so, he grabs Chan-hee by the collar, demanding to know where his friend is. While he's being beaten, Mina realizes she should do something. But if she used her ability, everyone would find out. Then she thinks she should just make them all disappear and concludes that wouldn't be so bad since they acted like trash. But as the boy was getting beaten, someone interrupts them. One of the teachers is outraged at witnessing the bullying. Worried, they try to get out of it by saying they were helping the boy. Min-al looks on hopefully, thinking they might be safe. He notices Chan-hee is dirty and scared, but he's startled when one of the students calls out to him. The boy, not caring about the situation, doesn't understand the teacher's confusion and becomes furious and speechless. Then the boy asks about the money the teacher supposedly owes him. Min-ah had heard rumors that he had invested and lost everything, but it was as if he had lost his soul too. The student then tells him to disappear and leave them alone, but the teacher suddenly notices Louis's absence. He was there looking for her as her grandmother, the president of Ilha Group, was calling her. To his surprise, no one could find her, and the student invites him to join the search and proposes that if he finds her, the debt will be considered paid. Then he pushes the teacher away, bidding farewell and making him leave. The student starts to think. He decides they hadn't seen Lua that day, which scares his friend since it was a lie. His friend asks what they'll do about Min-ah and who. He tells the boy to find his missing friend and to not tell anyone about what happened. Scared, the boy just agrees and the students say Min-ah should go with him. While they leave them alone and mock the situation, Min-ah reflects on Lua. At that moment, she must have already drowned and realizes she acted without thinking, and that might have cost someone their life. Besides that, there was Who, which makes her wonder if he could be a witness. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, a man was screaming desperately. He had already paid the money he owed, but even so, a hired killer was hunting him down and tells him someone paid for his life to be taken. In despair, he offers to pay even more to be spared, but the man ignores him getting ready to strike and finishes the job. He makes a phone call saying it's his daughter's birthday. Tired, he decides to call her, but what he doesn't know is that she can no longer answer. Lou doesn't pick up the phone, but her father isn't surprised since it happens more often than he'd like, and he walks away saddened, reflecting on how he was never a good father to her. It had been 2 days since Louis's disappearance, but despite that, everything was happening as normal. And Mina tries to understand why everyone acts like nothing happened. Meanwhile, her friends were trying to contact the girl. One of the boys starts getting worried, thinking things would get worse if they didn't find her. And he mentions that Luo gave false information that ended up causing someone to lose money on bets. At the same time, one of his friends approaches him, Jihan, to talk. In that moment, he hopes his friend has found the girl. However, Junwoo says he didn't find her anywhere. And that besides that, Ji was still calling and wanted to see Jihan immediately. The boy gets scared knowing he's screwed. Worried, he asks Junwoo to promise not to abandon him. He remembers that all of them, including their friend Yura, were in this together. But the guy says he was only hanging out with them because he was interested in Luo and that there's no reason for him to clean up their mess. Yura tries to persuade him, saying they've made a lot of memories together. He doesn't understand what she's talking about, and soon she tries to blackmail him with photos she has of him in nightclubs with other girls. He gets scared, not knowing she applauded that. She had taken pictures every time he messed around with girls at parties. Jenwoo gets furious. Then Jihan arrives trying to calm everyone down, saying what matters is that they stick together and that they should focus on finding Lua. So the guy agrees, having no other choice. Meanwhile, Chan-hee is in class. He watches Min-ah while they study. The girl worries whether the boy discovered her ability. Lua is the heiress of the Ilha group and would do whatever it takes to find her. So if the boy told anyone she was involved in the girl's disappearance, she'd be screwed. Chan-hee is startled when he hears someone shouting, and Mina invites him to talk. After that, in the big city, Luo's father talks in the car asking where they were going. His partner informs him that everything about the previous day had been resolved and that the target had been declared dead by a rival gang. She notices her boss is very distracted, and he admits something felt wrong. His daughter's social media hadn't been updated for 2 days, and on top of that, she hadn't posted anything about her birthday party. He also lamented as she didn't answer his call the day before. His friend tries to brush it off, reminding him that Luo had never considered him a real father. While in the car, he realizes they are being followed. But apparently, the car didn't look like it belonged to any gang, so she quickly speeds up to lose them. The man in the car behind starts calling for backup to keep them in sight, and thus the pursuit begins. Eventually, they are cornered. The mission leader begins calling for reinforcements, and suddenly from the water plant, the man he was chasing strikes him hard on the head. But one of his employees tries to defend his boss. However, he quickly strikes back in self-defense. Another employee pulls a gun, trying to take control of the situation, but the girl had already set her sights on him without his noticing. Lu's father looks at the man, trying to figure out who they were. But before he could shoot, the man said he was looking for Lee Soo-kian and that they were there under orders from the chairwoman to escort him. He's surprised to hear that his mother-in-law was looking for him. The man informs him that the chairwoman wanted to let him know Luo was missing. He's shocked to hear that. Meanwhile, the chairwoman of Illa Group announces that all unprofitable subsidiaries would be cut as part of an internal restructuring. Min-ah sees the news and is surprised as it still didn't mention anything about Lua. Chan-hee is with her. She asks if he had found out anything about the girl's disappearance, but she wasn't really worried about that. He admits he's upset because Min-ah got involved because of him, but she wasn't the type to get scared by things like that. Min-ah realizes that if he's worried, he probably doesn't know about her powers. But even if he had her perspective, he wouldn't know what to do with it. She couldn't throw him into the ocean too. She couldn't believe she was a murderer for what she did to Lua and almost did the same to the others. She couldn't do that to a boy who hadn't done anything wrong. Determined, she says that if they weren't together, he'd be too defenseless on his own. This way, she could keep an eye on the boy. But embarrassed, Chan-hee admits that nothing good would happen to her if they stayed together, and he hurriedly says goodbye, leaving Min-ah confused about why he was suddenly worried. Suddenly, a news alert reports a stabbing attack in front of a PC cafe, and authorities ask citizens to seek shelter. Hearing this, Min-ah immediately worries about he. On the street, a criminal was terrorizing people on the sidewalk and trying to strike everyone around him. As Chan-hee opens the door, a wound collapses in front of him. He notices and tries to help her. Chan-hee then sees the man close by, and the criminal upon seeing him immediately tries to attack him too. But suddenly, someone appears above them. It's Mina who had teleported there to save him. Before that, she had spotted him from a distance from the top of a building and felt anxious when she realized the boy was in danger. She quickly remembered Lua, and just as the man was preparing to attack him, she appeared behind him magically, causing him to fall to the ground. And while he grabbed her, the man tried to attack her. With no other choice, she used her power in front of everyone. Chan-hee was shocked. Suddenly, Min-ah was falling through the sky along with the criminal. She realized she had used her teleport without thinking it through. But as they fell, he tried to attack her again and ended up hitting her hand. Looking at him, she remembered other criminals too and then decided to let him fall, hitting the ground and terrifying everyone, receiving the punishment she felt he deserved. The police who had arrived on the scene tried to help he. Meanwhile, Mina teleports near the area and realizes that once again, she had taken someone's life. Regretful, she realizes she's in trouble. The news reported about a mysterious man who had fallen from the sky and that the two had vanished into thin air. Shortly after, he was confirmed dead from the fall. A man was playing golf and listening to the news. He realized this was another strange incident following Louis' disappearance. And in addition with the liquidation rumors, my shares have dropped by 98%. He turned to the students he had been sponsoring with his investments. Because Luo was the heiress of the Ilha group, she was the #1 successor everyone blindly trusted. He was dissatisfied with how business was going, and one of his men attacks Jai Han. Another grabs Jura. He holds the boy down on the floor like he's in a gangster movie. The bodyguard places a golf ball next to Jai Han's face, leaving him confused. Then the man hits the ball along with his ear. He warns him it's about 5 million won. Ji-han confesses that he had also been managing Lu's business, which his boss didn't know. That makes the man interested in hearing more. Meanwhile, Min-ah was at the crime scene. Chan, he hands her the backpack she had forgotten in the computer room. And as she was leaving, he asks how she had done it, but she doesn't know what to say. Far from there, while some children play on the beach, Lua's body suddenly surfaces in the sea. Min-ah decides she'll pretend not to know what Chan-hee is talking about, and when she walks away, he runs after her. She gets mad that he's following her. Playfully, he asks if her hand is okay and deduces that it was her who had hit the criminal with magic, just like she did with Lua. Worried that he had figured it out, she doesn't know what to do with he. Even if he told others, no one would believe him. And the knife with her blood, the only thing tying her to the crime must be with the police. She admits that she had taken both of their lives. Minna thinks he's stupid for facing a murderer and having the nerve to admit what he saw. He stares at her in fear, and then she starts laughing. She finds it funny because she couldn't bring herself to do the same to someone like him, and jokes that if she were a killer, he'd already be dead too. As she leaves him, she realizes she almost made that mistake again. But as she runs, he thanks her for saving him twice. Hearing that, she decides to say that never happened and leaves him feeling a strange emotion. Meanwhile, Jai Han and Yura talk. She's worried about what he's going to do about the 5 billion and won. He only has a week for that. He's angry at Lua's betrayal in the investments and decides to take revenge on everyone who screwed him. Besides that, he's furious for being the only one who got hurt. Jun was watching the two under his brother's orders. Jihan admits that if he gave him the 5 billion and won in portfolios he wanted, he'd go bankrupt. If they find Lua, they can fix everything in time, and waiting isn't an option. Junwoo runs off to search bars and clubs for her, and Jihan tells GRA they'll need to sell what Lua left behind. News spreads about a mysterious savior in a cap disappearing without a trace. Min-ah watches the news on her phone. She sees one of the witnesses relieved that the criminal had been caught and remembers to thank him for saving her and feels amazed to realize she did the right thing. Meanwhile, in the big city, Soo-hyun's friend is driving. She tells him the investigation is ongoing and the public is being asked to help, and he listens, agreeing. He arrives at a large Ilha group building. His mother-in-law arrives while he waits. However, she's crying from the bad news she brings. Years earlier, Soo-hyun cried in a hospital room. His wife hadn't survived childbirth, and his mother-in-law arrived holding little Luo in her arms. She humiliates him and doesn't let him get close to his daughter, saying that a child of the Ilha group couldn't be involved with someone like him. So while the guards hold him, Soo-hyun is humiliated. He still tries to control his rage. Now 16 years later, he receives news about his daughter. Saddened, he goes to visit her lifeless body. She mourns not having witnessed the small moments in her life. Suddenly, his mother-in-law confesses she didn't call him because he was her father, but because he was known as the world's best assassin. And she orders him to bring her the head of whoever did that to Lua. However, he refuses, saying that at least this once, he would try to be a normal father. It had already been 5 days since Lua's disappearance, and her friends had also stopped attending school. In the hallways, Min-ah hears other students happy about it, and she feels satisfied with what she did. She had taken the lives of 2 people, yet everyone around her seemed to be happy about it. Chan-hee shows up to greet her. She notices he's had a cheerful look ever since Lua disappeared, and she remembers when he used to suffer at her hands. And once again, she convinces herself that she did the right thing with her. However, she turns her back on the running boy as if she didn't know him. She says that since he called her a murderer, he must be scared, but he never said that. He get only thanked her and now wanted to return the favor. So she asked him for a coffee since she hadn't slept at all the night before. He had been surprised, but he's happy to be useful. He runs quickly to a nearby cafe, and Min-ah is surprised by his enthusiasm. Meanwhile, he goes to a coffee machine. But while he's in a good mood, he gets a big scare. Lu's friends were there to torment him. Jihan pretends to be close to a guy and steals one of his cans. He intimidates the boy, asking if he had looked for his friend. Frightened, he says he didn't know where to start. Then he grabs him to have a private conversation. When they get outside, they throw Chan-hee aside. Jihan tries to understand why he and Min-ah weren't searching for Lu together. Lying on the ground, Chan-hee says the boys should look for her themselves. Jihan jokes that he couldn't hear him because his ear was bad, but when Chan-hee repeats himself, he gets a huge kick in the stomach. The guy says Chan-hee was making his own life harder that way, and they're surprised when they hear him say that they were nothing without Lua. As punishment, Young-woo grabs him and starts beating the boy again. Meanwhile, Jihan receives a phone call. It's Ura, saying she's not sure if she found the flower in Lua's things and decides she should keep looking in the warehouse. Meanwhile, Junwoo continues enjoying himself with Hee, but suddenly, he's interrupted by Min. Junwoo is pleased to see her there, and she approaches, confronting him. Junwoo admits that he really wanted to see her, and that if she hadn't found Lua, she would suffer at his hands too. She stared at him, wondering how many more people would have to put up with him. When he gets close, she asks if no one had ever punished him before. He looks confused by the question, and suddenly the two of them are falling from the heights of the big city. Min-ah decides to give him the punishment no one had given before and magically disappears, leaving him to fall alone. He lands on the rooftop of a building, but with an injured foot. Furious, he wonders where they are. She calls it the Tower of Regret. Min-ah begins using her teleportation ability, leaving him confused, and suddenly strikes him. She was giving him a chance to reflect on his mistakes and change, but he's furious and tries to attack her. But she vanishes, and he hits the ground falling. Jenwoo tries to intimidate her, saying his brother is dangerous. Impatient, she grabs him by the clothes and teleports several times with him, leaving him badly injured. He apologizes as she approaches, but suddenly tries to hit her with a rock. So she teleports with him again, seeing that there was no hope left. Meanwhile, Jae-han is talking on the phone. He decides they'll sell the flower on their own, ignoring higher orders. When he goes looking for June, he's confused that he's disappeared. And mysteriously, his friend falls from the sky in front of him, and he looks at it in disbelief. He screams in fear. But when the boy looks to the side, he sees Minna. She was satisfied with what she had done, but he was crying desperately, and so she magically vanishes again. After that, someone was looking at a photo of Lu's friends. Soo Jaein and his companion would begin investigating them. Even though he was Lu's father, her friends would know more about her than he did. His friend was impressed by the way he carried himself despite everything. So Hae-ri believed that somehow she could find a way into his heart. But as they were walking, Soo-han noticed something. Police cars and ambulances were at the school. He asked if something had happened, and the one who answered was Min-na, saying there had been an accident. As she walked away, he looked at her thoughtfully. He had remembered his daughter as they seemed to be the same age. They go to the principal's office. There, Hari informs them that they were there on behalf of Ilha Group. One of Lewis's teachers introduces himself. Hari had heard about the accident that occurred that day. She places photos of 3 students on the table. The men are shocked when they see which students they were, and she informs them that Jungkook had been found dead that day. Soo-kyun then asks Lu's teacher to explain what her school routine was like in detail precisely. Meanwhile, Ura was still searching for something. She was trying to call Jae-han on the phone, but suddenly someone appears. Jae-han had just arrived running to find her. Desperate, he tells her what happened with Junwoo earlier, and that he didn't understand how it all went down. Then suddenly, he thinks of something. He remembers Jeon-sung being furious for losing his brother and his money. He warns Ura that they need to get out of there as soon as possible. Suddenly, his phone rings. He opens the locker to grab his backpack quickly, but they are caught off guard by Jeon-sung's arrival. Ji-han is confused as to how he found them. Ura admits she told him settling her debt. Ji-han becomes furious, but suddenly, Jeon-sung strikes Ji-i's head. He demands the money Jeon-sung owed him. One of his men opens the boy's bag. Inside, there were easily over 5 billion won in powder. Jun-sung steps on his head, questioning why a student would have that, but he gets an important phone call. He's surprised to find out that Jun-woo has been found dead. The head of the order commands them to gather everything and arrest them before heading to the hospital. Ura panics and says she had already seen Jun-woo's dead body. Jun-seon becomes curious how she already knew what happened and betraying Ji-han's trust once again. She says he told her beforehand. So Jun-seon begins to believe he was the one who did that to Jun. He starts slamming his head into the floor demanding answers, and Ji-han says he thinks he knows who was responsible for it. At home, he tries to stay calm in the bathroom. His grandmother worries if he's okay despite what happened at his school, but he insists that he's fine. Meanwhile, Min-ah watches the city deep in thought. Before all of that, the president of the Ulha group was driving with her granddaughter. Lee Ji-hyun was taking her granddaughter to school to spend some time together. Lua, still sulking, complains about being forced to abandon a business with friends since her grandmother thought it was a waste of time. She thought they chased money like dogs, but that was too shallow. There are things in the world that don't move with money, like madness, like love. And sometimes, Lua had the same look in her eyes as her mother, a gaze where nothing else mattered but insanity. The girl is moved upon hearing that from her grandmother and hugs her. She thanks her for the time together and says she'd never betray her grandmother like her mother did. While Hyun was remembering that, she was interrupted by something. Soo-hyun was standing in front of her car. He joins her to talk. She knew that Luo had always been an exceptional girl with everything under control, even too much for her age. But her protective grandmother couldn't understand how something could have gone wrong with someone so brilliant. Soo-hyun was furious, wanting to know what she had done to his daughter. But he knew Hyun had more authority over the girl than he did, and he calmed down. She promises to give him anything he wants as long as he finds the one responsible for Lu's death. At home, he says goodbye to his grandmother. He tries to hide that he's upset and makes up an excuse to go out. When he's alone, he removes the mask he wore to hide his injury, but he's startled by Min-ah's presence. She says she knew where he lived since she dropped him off the day before. He remembers Junwoo and starts to feel very sick to the point of vomiting. He asks Min-ah if the boy was really murdered. Satisfied, she confirms it. admitting that now Junwoo and Luo wouldn't bother him anymore, but that worries he. Min-ah tries to explain that she gave a chance before deciding to end Jun's life and then gave him what he deserved, which reminded her of her father. He is confused by that. Mina admits her father was a police officer killed by someone like Jun. And because of all that, Lu's father blamed himself for not being there for her. Among all the people who resented Lua, someone had to be responsible, and he was determined to find out who it was. At school, the crime scene had been sealed off, and much was being said about what happened to Jun. Min-na watches the news on her phone about the ongoing investigation. He wonders if she plans to get involved. She explains that a victim died 2 years later from trauma, and the criminal was never punished. Determined, she runs off and he tries to stop her. But she reminds him that he was the only one who benefited before, and now it's for someone else. Still, he tries to convince her it's wrong to follow through, but he's soon stopped by other girls since he almost entered the girls' bathroom by mistake. Embarrassed, he explains that it wasn't what it looked like. But suddenly, Mina calls to him in the hallway. She had done what she wanted. Quickly, the news that the criminal had been defeated was already spreading. Everyone believed he had thrown himself off from above on his own. And as far as everyone knew, Min-na had just been in the bathroom. Meanwhile, at the morgue, Junwoo's autopsy was being performed. The doctor informed Soo Hyun that the cause had been a massive fall. However, there were no tall buildings near where he was found. Ri was speaking with a detective who pretended not to know much about Junwoo and Lua. Despite that, he revealed that he knew a lot about the boy and was deeply involved in the case. But while they were talking, they were interrupted. Jun Seon had arrived to see his brother's body. Once again, he became furious upon seeing him and promised revenge. But soon, he grew curious to know who the people there were. He confronted Soo Hyun, demanding to know what he was doing there. Soo Hyun showed no emotion, which made him even angrier. Detective Cho tried to calm him down. Jen Si shouted in rage. Cho asked the two of them to leave. Soo Hyun and Hari agreed without any other option. Leaving the room, they spoke in the elevator. Soo Hyun had noticed that Song never asked them how his brother had died. Hari was surprised, and naturally they decided they would begin investigating him. Meanwhile, He tries to talk to Min. She believed she was making the right choices and defending the victim. Min-ah grabs his arms as he doubted her. She believes that He saw her as the real villain, so she decides to show him what she was capable of. And the two of them vanished from the sidewalk magically, and suddenly, they were falling from the heights of the city. The boy was terrified, and Mina proves he didn't really know her. She lets him go and leaves him falling, but she's startled when he hits the ground. Min-ah tries to calm him after they had teleported to a cliff. He looks around and realizes they were far from the city. Since gaining her ability, Min-ah had always sought out unique landscapes, even if isolated. Min-ah promises him adventures, but only on the condition of total silence. And she extends her hand, inviting him to travel again. Meanwhile, Jeon Song is at the morgue refusing to hold his brother's funeral until he finds a killer. He receives a phone call discovering a lead. The detective tries to cover up the case, but Jeon Song explodes with rage. So he leaves the place followed by his men. Hari looked at a photo of Jeon Song. She regretted getting involved with the criminal connected to Jeon Song's coin scheme. The plan had been to profit with the support of the Ilha group, but she had ruined everything. And so the liquidation vote spread, and now he wanted revenge. In the car, Soo Hyun was either leaving the area with his men, and Song was following him. Far from there, Min-ah and he teleported to an abandoned place. She considered that place her secret base. He noticed a wall filled with photographs. The girl said there were photos of places she had visited and didn't want to forget. He was impressed and asked if she could go to the United States or Europe too, but she had never left Korea and had limitations with her teleportation. Her longest record was reaching the West Coast, and after that, she was completely drained. While they talked, she asked him to wait and vanished magically. He was frightened, thinking he had been abandoned there. So he opened the door to leave, but was met with a great height. Terrified, he begged for Mina to return quickly. And suddenly, she reappeared happily, holding some packages. She handed him a donut pack she had brought for him. The good thing about her ability was that she could go to any store in an instant. He realized that with Min-ah, an abandoned place wasn't ideal. So the two of them returned to the cliff with a view of the city. Min-ah began telling him about the incredible landscape she had seen. She asked Chan-hee if he still saw her as a monster. He didn't understand why she couldn't just enjoy her power peacefully. The girl saw what she did as her mission. He tried to warn her that taking lives couldn't be a mission. Min-ah found her friend's concern amusing. She promised not to hurt anyone else. Chan-hee was happy to hear it, but he sensed it wasn't sincere. Meanwhile, in city traffic, Jae-han informed was sure that Chan-hee lived at that address. He slapped his head, hoping the boy had told the truth. But walking along the sidewalk, they soon spotted Min-ah and Chan-hee walking calmly. Jae-han said that shortly before Junwoo was found, he had been with that he. Curious, the man asked who the girl with him was, but he ignored it and decided he would take her in the car with them as well. The two teens are suddenly startled. Ji-han had found them there breaking off from the conflict. Ji-han asks if Chan-hee was the one who took John's life, but upon hearing that both of them are shocked. Ji-han becomes furious since he was the only one with the friend that day, and because of that, his life was now at risk. Min-ah interrupts him, wanting to defend her friend. She considers doing to him the same thing she did to Lua, but suddenly, a large man appears behind them with a stun gun. After that, both of them were taken to an unknown location, and John Seon had arrived, determined to find them. Little by little, Min-ah begins to wake up confused. Meanwhile, she was blindfolded and tied up, worried. She wanted to know what was happening to her friend. Chan-hee was restrained and collapsed on the floor. John Seon asks Jae-han to explain what had happened. He couldn't believe his brother had been taken down by someone so weak, but Jae-han kept insisting it was him, since he was the last person to see John Woo. Min-ah starts getting anxious as she couldn't take the blame with her mouth covered. Jun-song grabs Chan-hee by the head. He wanted to know exactly what had happened to his brother. But before the boy could respond, he punches him hard in the stomach. Min-ah couldn't use her power since she couldn't see them. She could only hear the sounds around her praying for it to end. He hits Chan-hee repeatedly, knocking him unconscious. Jun-song then decides to uncover Min. When she opens her eyes, she sees her friend badly hurt. The girl begins to cry and apologize for what Chan-hee was going through. Jun-song becomes curious about what she was apologizing for so much. Min-ah admits she should have killed them all at once when she had the chance. Hearing that makes Jun-song even more furious, and he tries to punch her hard. But she uses her power and phases through his body with magic. Everyone is stunned. Not knowing how to control the ability well, both she and John Seon are flung far away. No one understands what just happened. Gradually, Min-ah starts breaking free from her restraints. Downstairs, the men are worried by the noise. They soon realize someone is coming. She, Soo-hyun, and Hari were searching for Seon. Quickly, they punch one of the men in the face. The others start surrounding Soo-hyun to stop him. He insists on seeing Jun-song. Hari asks to try reasoning with them. Politely, she also asks for Jun-song's location. But to her surprise, they throw knives at her as a response. One of the men mocks her, threatening to throw again. But suddenly, something flies past his face. A knife nearly hit one of his companions in the head. Ri had competed in the Mind Olympics. That made the others furious, and they charged at her. With swift moves, she dodges and takes control of the situation, stabbing a knife into the man's mouth. She immobilizes him and threatens him if he tries anything. For now, she had him. Soo-han reminds her they still had a problem to solve, so she removes the knife from the man's mouth so he can talk. But suddenly, the man comes crashing down in their direction. They dodge to avoid being hit and are left confused by the body lying there. Soo-hyun realizes something. More men were descending from the ceiling of the building they were in, and they also fell toward them. Suddenly, the ground was covered in filthy, lifeless bodies. Upstairs, Min-ah was using her powers. She did everything she could to fight the men surrounding her. She would vanish and reappear, striking them before they could see her, and so she knocked them down one by one from the upper floor. But from overusing her power, her head felt like it was going to explode. For a moment, she hears Chan-hee call her Shorty. Worried, she checks to see if her friend is okay. Min-ah planned to get him to a hospital and save him. But suddenly, a man was approaching her from behind and hits her off guard. She takes a heavy blow to the head. Lying on the ground, she tries to look around and understand what's happening. Jun-song approaches, asking if it was true what she did to his brother. Mocking him, she replies that Jun-woo started crying sooner than she expected. Hearing that, the man becomes furious and prepares to strike again. She tries to use her powers, but before she can, she feels something. He had thrown himself in front of her to protect her and is struck in the head. She screams in despair, unable to believe what just happened. He's final words are for her to run away. With regret, he vanishes magically. Jun Seonong is confused upon seeing the girl disappear, and suddenly, she reappears behind him to strike. But when he sees her, he quickly turns around trying to strike her and lands a strong blow to her stomach. Min is thrown back flying far and crashes to the ground beside his body. One of the men asks the boss what they should do with the bodies, but as he looks, he notices something. Min was still alive, so he decides to finish her off once and for all. Without strength, she awaited her end, but suddenly someone appears and strikes Jun Seon from behind. His body is thrown far, saving the young girl. That's when Soo-han approaches Min and checks if the young girl is okay. Looking at her, he recognizes her from when he saw her at the school entrance. He couldn't understand how she would be in a place like that, and for a moment, as he looked at her, he remembered his daughter Lu's body. From behind him, Jun Seon was approaching to attack. He dodges the attack quickly, throwing the villain's body to the ground, but Jun Seon gets up to fight. Soo-gon prepares to engage, and Jun Seon recognizes him from the hospital where his brother had been. Thinking the man was involved in what happened, Jun Song charges in to fight. Soo-hyun realizes the thug wouldn't settle anything with words, and Jun Song tries to strike him again. But Soo-hyun dodges easily and counters with a punch, then lands a strong kick to his face, causing the villain's vision to blur. Jon Song tries to hit him again, but Soo-han grabs him. With a strike, he breaks one of his arms and hits him hard in the head. Defeated, he falls to the ground, leaving Soo-han satisfied. Hari then runs in looking for her boss. She had already contacted the agency. With Min-ah in his arms, he asks his friend to call a doctor too. Min-ah, with blurry vision, sees him trying to wake her, and he introduces himself as a police officer and promises to take her to the hospital. Min-ah is struck by the word police. She looks at Soo, and for a moment, she remembers her father. Confused, she calls him Dad, and Soo-hyun is surprised and ends up remembering Luo too. And as if he were her father, he promises to save her just as he wished he had saved his daughter. They head to the hospital. There, Min-ah was trying to recover. She wakes up with her mother in despair. Worried, she tells her daughter she should rest. She didn't understand what had happened and feared she had lost her daughter too. Min-ah was still confused and soon noticed her friend was missing. The girl grew concerned for but soon Soo-han shows up to calm her down and explain that he was recovering in the ICU. Min-ah is left speechless upon seeing Soo's presence. Before that, he and Hae-ru met with Jon Seon, who was still in custody. The criminal tried to intimidate them even while restrained. Impatient, Hari presses the tip of a knife into his back and jokes, saying it was just chiropractic therapy. Soo-hyun hoped he would cooperate and begins his questions. He asks if Jun Seon was responsible for what happened to Lua, but he's surprised and swears he knows nothing. Lua was one of the people managing all his money, and without her, he'd be screwed. He tells Soo that the girl with glasses might have information about Lua, and he suddenly remembers Min-ah and grows confused. Jon Song insists that they had the wrong guy and that he was after his brother's killer. But suddenly, as he talks, he begins to convulse. Soo-hyun and Hari are confused, and suddenly, Jon Song was already lifeless. At the hospital, Soo-hyun watched Min-ah thoughtfully. She remembered him too. He had been in front of her school on the day of Jun-woo's punishment. Her mother asked if she remembered anything and said that detective had saved her. She thanks him, saying she'd never forget what he had done for her daughter. Soo-hyun explains that those men were already in custody, and this makes Nina worried, wondering if they had survived. However, she's even more concerned about how her friend is doing. He was unconscious. They watched the boy in a coma with no prediction for when he might wake. Seeing him, Nina blames herself for never doing things the right way. And if she had taken the lives of all three at once, none of this would have happened. In the hospital halls, an elderly woman was calling for Detective Soo. Chan-hee's grandmother was worried if the person responsible had been arrested. She couldn't understand why someone would do that to a poor child. But suddenly, Min feels something strange. Weak, she collapses in the hospital hallway, and so she is taken to a room to rest. Soo-kyeon then decides to leave and says goodbye. Her mother asks the man to wait a moment and steps out of the room. Along with Min Ah, she asks if her villains had been arrested, but he reassures her saying the culprit is no longer alive. Only then does she remember something. It was Soo Hyun who had taken down John Seon. The man explains that she shouldn't worry, and that he had only received the punishment he deserved. That leaves her in shock. She remembers when she was younger and had taken Dory's life, and she also believed she had given that mutt the punishment she deserved. Soo Hyun admits it was his job to punish people. Mina then thanks him. Still at the hospital, Hari and Soo Hyun talk about something still going on. Jun Song and the gang members had been defeated, but they could still find leads. Meanwhile, Min Ah watched Chan Hee in a coma. She remembered Jihan holding him responsible for finding Lua and accusing him of killing June. She realizes there was someone who hadn't gotten what they deserved, and determined, she concludes that this time she wouldn't make the same mistake. At the Il-hae Group Hospital, Soo Jian and Hae re-meet with Lee Ji-ken. She confronts him for a serious failure in his mission where John Seon was taken down before being interrogated. Harry tries to justify herself, but they are accused of acting impulsively and jeopardizing everything. Despite admitting fault, they're given an ultimatum. One more mistake and they'd be discarded. As she's leaving, she becomes curious about the young people who were with Seon. Lee Ji-hyun asks them to investigate what they know about Lua as well, and to make sure to erase anything that could make Lua look suspicious. Soo Yen admits he believes those kids were victims of Lua, and Lee Ji-han saw that as all the more reason to keep them quiet. But her demands made Soo Hyun even more impatient with Jae. Still at the hospital, Nina rested in her room, but she quickly teleports to her secret base. There she finds the box of donuts she had left. After a moment, she remembers her friend Chan Hee smiling. Hopeful, she fiddles with her phone and comes across the photo of Jae-han and his deceased friend Jen. She concludes she should have ended his life when she had the chance. He knew she was involved in what happened to Lua, so she knew she had to do whatever it took to find him. Meanwhile, Soo Hyun and Hari talk in the car. They discuss waiting for Jun-woo's autopsy and whether Min Ah might have information about Lua. Soo Hyun believes that perhaps Jun Seon was being manipulated by Ji-han. As he reflects, he starts remembering the men who fell on top of them earlier. Hari informs him that Lua's autopsy result was drowning. However, Soo Hyun finds it suspicious and decides they should see his daughter's body one more time. They head to the hospital. However, they are not allowed to enter. While being held back, a man taps his shoulder. So he immobilizes the man with a strike and throws him to the ground. Seeing the others trying to reach him, he throws the security guard at them, and that clears the way so he can go see his daughter's body. The doctor tries to explain that the president would be furious if she found out about his visit. Hari becomes curious about what her boss is looking for. He notices bruises on the girl's leg and more on her back, so he believes Luo must have fallen from a great height, concluding that whoever took her life did the same to June. However, they didn't know that it was Min. Along with some photos were the ashes of Jun-woo, Min's father. She was there to confess a secret to him. She had taken the lives of some people. She believed that if he were alive, he'd be furious just like when he did the same to Dory. Bad people like that had taken his life and hurt Chan-hee too. She remembered Soo Hyun saying it was his job to punish people like that. Min Ah believed she had received her powers so she could do the same. Convinced, she disappears magically. Meanwhile, on the streets, a delivery man parks his motorcycle. He leaves a food delivery near a door. Sometime later, Yura discreetly picks up the bag. In the room, Jae-han rushes her to close the door. Frightened, Yura agrees. Since there was no news about what had happened, he had witnessed Mina using her power and killing several men. Focused, thinking about it, he gets startled as his friend calls out to him. Yura and he argue about how the plan had gone wrong and everything got out of control. Furious, he kicks the girl, blaming her for everything that happened since she was the one who introduced her to Lua. But Yura reminds him that if it weren't for that, he never would have gotten rich. So they start shouting and fighting with each other. Jae-han concludes that none of that would solve their problems and that they needed to protect themselves. And since they couldn't go to the police, they would seek out an even stronger organization. Besides that, they were searching for Min on more than anyone else. In her office, Jio was waiting for Soo. He confronts his mother-in-law who accuses him of overstepping his boundaries, reminding him that he was a criminal who only had power because of her. However, Soo Hyun demands that she let him protect her daughter as he had promised. Then she once again asks him to bring her the head of whoever was responsible for Lua. But while they were talking, they were interrupted by Hari. He was on an urgent call. On the other end, it was Yura claiming she knew who Lua's killer was. Meanwhile, Mina was on top of a building. She was looking at Yura's social media and quickly discovered where they were hiding. Mina figures out the place shown in the photo posted by the girl. However, if she broke into the place without knowing the inside, she could lose her and put everything at risk. At the building's entrance, she noticed many vans parked. Ri and Sukaion were there. Using her phone zoom, she identifies the two of them. Cornered, Mina hesitates between invading the place or fleeing from the police whom she believed were involved. Soo-hyun and Hae-rae enter the elevator with other men. He states that if Jihan was with Ura, they should secure everyone's safety, and so they go to find them. And in the hallway, Mina follows them while hiding. Hari turns around quickly, but sees no one besides them. Still confused, she swears she saw someone, and Mina hides, spying on them. In the room, Yura fears what might happen to her. She's startled when she hears the doorbell. She looks at the security cameras, and there was Hae-ri waiting in the hallway. She says they had come for an important conversation. However, Yura was afraid to open the door, but she gathers the courage and opens a small crack to look outside. And with just that small opening, she gets startled. At the end of the hallway was Mina, and hidden, she was watching in silence. When Yura realizes who it was, she screams. Hari quickly grabs the door to keep it from closing. And inside the room, Yura bumps into Mina, who was already there. The girl hugs her from behind instantly. Soon, the others rush into the room. However, they're shocked to see that it's the missing girl. Suddenly, Ura is falling. She hits the ground in Min-na's secret base and screams as she hurt her legs in the fall. Min-na says she and Jun-woo acted like two crybabies. Ura explains that she hadn't said anything about her. Min-na understands but wants to talk about other things. She didn't want to hear about that now, but promises to keep her alive if she reveals Key's location. Meanwhile, the others try to find them. Hari tries to understand how someone could disappear like that so quickly. Soo-hyun orders his men to search the area around the building. He concludes it must have been the same killer as his daughters, and they were using the same method for Yura's disappearance. Soo-hyun didn't care how it happened, only about Louis's safety. They reached the top of the building and split up to investigate. Other teams were also combing the area for the killer. In an apartment in the building next door was Kai. He watched them hidden behind the window. He knew those were Ilha Group's cars parked outside. But if Yura wasn't with them, he would have to handle it himself after all the trouble he'd gone through. But suddenly, he's startled by the doorbell. He walks to the door and checks the security camera. There was his friend asking him to let her in. He opens the door angrily. However, he wasn't expecting Mina to be hidden with Yura, and the girl greets him, satisfied to see him. Frightened, he rushes to the door. However, the girl had already teleported into his room. Still holding Yura with her, Mina says it was time for Jihan to be punished for what he had done. He runs to the door trying to escape, but Mina appears magically blocking him. Startled, he falls, knocking into Yura and crashes to the floor. Mina watches him nervous. Yura pleads for the girl's mercy, saying she never did anything to Min-na. But while they're talking, she tells them both to shut up. Min-na was outraged that, at the end of their lives, they didn't even mention Chan-hee. Jihan tries to argue back, but explains that he was the one who called the Ilha Group men. Min-na is surprised to hear this and quickly concludes that Sukin wasn't a real detective. Jihan states that once the truth comes out, they won't let her go unpunished and says that this will be the end of the girl. But at that moment, Min-na no longer cared about being exposed for who she truly was. She challenges him to tell the reporters that a student with powers is after him. Jihan, already impatient, points a stun gun at the girl. And behind Nina, Yur gets ready to hit her with a chair. However, the girl vanishes, causing Yur to end up in front of Jihan and take the shock instead. Min-na laughs at the situation from the corner of the room. Since they acted like bullies, now they would be punished by her. She then pulls out a baton, preparing to avenge her friend. Confused, Jihan says he didn't know anything about what had happened to the boy. And using her powers, she drives the bait in through the boy's head and throws him across the room. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Soo-hyun and Hari hear a suspicious noise. They realize it came from the building nearby, so they run toward the place calling for backup. Inside the apartment, Jihan is thrown with force. He's confused, not knowing what is happening. Min-na explains that her friend hasn't woken up because of him, but still, he doesn't know how to respond. and she asks why he did it, intimidating him, but the answer no longer matters since she knows her friend won't wake up anyway. She notices people are arriving because of the noise. It wouldn't be bad if the Ilha group saw them. The girl tries to calm Jae-han since her friend was still alive, so she wouldn't take the boy's life too. Soo-hyun and his men hurry, not wanting to let the suspects escape again. No one had left the scene, but he knew the suspect acted quickly and mysteriously. As they walk, something heads in their direction. The two are shocked by what had just happened. Yuri's lifeless body had suddenly fallen from the sky. Soo-hyun, looking up at the top of the building, finds out who was responsible. But the one up there was the young guy Han. Believing he was the killer, Soo-hyun becomes furious. And magically, Jae-han vanishes and everyone is stunned, believing he was the one they were looking for. They run to try and catch him. Soo-kyun stares at the city escape tents. It had been exactly like when Yura disappeared. However, he still couldn't believe that Ji-han had murdered her in front of everyone. Hari tries to find out if the other teams have discovered anything. Then she's surprised to hear her boss say they wouldn't investigate any further. If Jae-han really had powers, he wouldn't be in that building anymore. Suk-yen is disappointed, having lost sight of the one who took his daughter's life. Furious, he lets out a loud roar of anger. But meanwhile, Jae-han was falling into an unknown place. Min-na had thrown him into a dark hole in the ground. After falling, was lost, not knowing where he was. Min-na finds him holding a phone flashlight. She calls him a coward because after everything that happened, and he begs for his life, that makes the girl furious. But what she really wanted was for him to beg to Chan-hee, not to her. Still, she calms down saying she would keep him alive. But first, she wanted the password to his phone since everything had started with that device. He pretends to cooperate, confident his data is protected. He then asks her to get him out of there, but Minna never promised that. He didn't expect to have to escape on his own. Moreover, she explains that Yura tried to report Lu's location and became Jae-han's victim. He panics hearing the version she had made up, but Min-na says that's the version the Ilha group witnessed. Then he remembers Soo-hyun and the wind on the sidewalk while he was standing at the top of the building. Only then does he realize the girl had planned everything from the beginning. Ji-han feels completely ruined, and she says goodbye, disappearing, and leaving him alone. Still, he continues begging her not to abandon him. She goes outside the abandoned mine and is pleased to realize she's not there to hear anything else, and so she focuses appearing to teleport once again. Min-na had gone to visit her comatose Chan-hee again. She wonders if he would be disappointed to find out she had taken another life. Min-na promises him she'll finish them all, and that if Chan-hee wants to stop her, he'll have to wake up. One of the hospital staff enters the room. She thought she had heard someone, but the boy was alone. The next day, students return to school. They talk about the murders, disappearances, and schemes involving students from that school. Mina listens in silence, and at the end of class, she walks outside. However, something strange was happening. A police officer was arguing with a reporter who wanted to phone some students. But quickly, he points his phone camera at Nina as soon as he spots her. He was excited to find her. The girl is confused by what is happening, and she was known as the student with psychic powers who had stopped the massacre in the computer room. Her identity was a mystery, but he had discovered it. Min-na watched the boy imagining dozens of questions. On his phone camera, he continued recording the girl. He asked if she believed she had done the right thing. However, he is interrupted by Su Kang's arrival. He grabs the boy's phone, stopping the recording. The boy becomes furious at the man's actions, but Su Kang ignores him and turns his attention to what mattered. And soon, he comes face to face with Min-na again. She is confused by the situation and didn't want to run into Su Kyan so suddenly. So she starts thinking about how she could escape that situation. The boy who was recording approaches Su Kyan demanding his phone back. But as he threatens him, he says he'll call the police. Soo-hyun grabs his finger with one hand, breaking it before the boy could expect it. He screams in pain in front of everyone, and Soo-hyun discovers the boy had been secretly filming students in a perverted way. The other students, once they find out, are outraged. The boy tries to justify himself, but the students had already spread the news online about his perversion, and so he ends up embarrassed. Mina realizes then that he hadn't just been filming her, but also other girls at school. She approaches and asks if they can talk. They go to a diner. Min-na thanks him for the food. She jokes that she eats a lot since school exams burn so many calories. Her friend joins them to have some ice cream too. Min-ah also thanks him for saving her once again. He says it was his duty as a detective, but the girl knows that was a lie, and she begins to question the true identity of that man. Min-ah tries to lighten the mood and asks if the two of them are dating. This gives Hari hope and makes Su-kong impatient. She says they look good together, and as Su-kong watches her, he remembers Lua. He listens to the girls chatting, and Hari confesses that she thought the girl was a good actress, but tried too hard and tripped over her own performance. Seo Hyun was still thinking about Lua. Min-ah stops eating and admits she didn't remember much of what had happened. She says she was kidnapped because of Ji-han, who sent her friend nearly to his death. She had lost consciousness and now only had unanswered questions. She didn't understand how Ji-han could have taken Jun-woo's life. Su-jian believed he had thrown him off a building. Min-ah confirms. He apologizes for making her recall such traumatic scenes, but they needed to investigate. They were also looking for Ji-han and were seeking information. Then they discussed Ji-han's real motive behind Jung's death. But suddenly, Min-ah decides she needs to go to the bathroom. There she washes her face, and Harry spies on her from a hidden spot, but the girl doesn't notice. At the table, Soo-hyun tries to understand what's going on in his head and why Min reminded him so much of Lua. As they leave the restaurant, they mention the investigation would continue. He says goodbye to the girl, thanking her despite the stress. On the sidewalk, her mother was calling from a distance. Soo-hyun had informed her of her daughter's location since she was underage. He also asks that she get in touch if her memory improves. After the girl leaves them, Hari admits she believed it was all an act. Besides that, there was a piece of evidence about the video from the incident in front of the computer room. It was a DNA sample found on the knife used in the crime, so they could check it against all the suspects involved. In the footage, people tried to understand where that person had come from. Mina was watching the news report on her phone. Science denied it, but the internet had many theories about a teleportation the police kept ignoring. Mina had started out trying to help a friend and ended up exposing her power to everyone. She then understood why that guy had found her at school. He was a sensationalist YouTuber. He was annoying and could continue to be a problem. But when she starts to consider getting rid of him, she stops herself. She remembers she had ruined everything because she got angry. She had been impulsive and wouldn't make that mistake again. Out of respect for her friend, she decides she will be more careful from now on. Soon her mother looks for her, and she gets a little startled. Her uncle Hung Yen had come to visit them. As they talk, he recalls the past with guilt for not having helped more, but she comforts him, recognizing his importance to the family. She felt she owed her life to Jun-woo and had repaid it with very little. He promises to honor Jun-woo by taking care of the family. They are grateful, but it wasn't his fault. However, Min-ah believed that the man who had hurt her father didn't seem to feel any remorse. Hearing the girl, her mother becomes terrified. Min-ah couldn't accept that he had taken a life and only got 13 years. And her mother reminds her they had promised to forget about that man and live well for her father's sake, and she agrees with nothing else to say. Do you ever notice anything strange when you look at your uncle? He asks about the kidnappings her mother went through. Her mother, nervous, admits that Detective Soo-hyun had taken her statements and was moving the case forward, and Hyun-in finds Detective Soo suspicious but quickly hides it so as not to worry them. They wanted to thank the officer who saved her life, but they couldn't give gifts because of the anti-corruption law. During the conversation, Min-ah grows thoughtful and wonders whether Soo-hyun is really a detective. Min-ah felt safe thanks to the officer who saved her. Hyung-hyun explained that John Seon had died during a failed arrest, closing the case. Now it was time to move forward away from danger. Min-ah agrees satisfied. As he said goodbye, Hyung-hyun promised to come back even if always busy, and said he was currently focused on investigating the mystery of the computer room. She says goodbye pretending to be happy and unaware of everything, but Sim concludes she can't waste any more time. After leaving them, Hyun-yen begins to spiral in his thought. He tries to convince himself that Jun-woo's daughter was only caught up in a dirty setup. The next day, the investigation continued. Inspector Hyun-yen was ready to begin his work, but grows displeased upon seeing who was there. Soo-gon and Hae-ri soon arrived to work together. They discuss analyzing the evidence that had been released by their superiors. They enter the evidence room. Hung Yen picks out one of the boxes, and inside is the murder weapon, still stained with the mysterious victim's DNA. As he suspected, the detective asks if he's enjoying himself. But Hyunmi-eun, completely out of patience, goes towards Soo and, concerned, questions his closeness with Min. Soo-gon is surprised to learn that he knows the girl too. However, as they talk, outside something falls from the sky. The inspector warns him to stay away from his knees. But while they're speaking, they are interrupted by another officer. He's there to report that someone had fallen from the sky under mysterious circumstances, and suddenly someone appears, hooded, on top of one of the police vehicles and greets them without revealing their identity.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.